Welcome to my channel. In 1992, a family living in the small rural town of Planada, California, they experienced a series of strange events that shook them to their core. From moans in the night to a shadowy figure outside their window, their house seemed to be haunted by an unseen presence. But things took a turn for the worse when their beloved grandmother passed away, and the family was left grappling with the aftermath of her death. This is their story. Let's begin. The Shadow in the Night. In 1992, my family lived in a small rural town called Planada. We only have a few chickens, but our yard is big. We grow sugarcane, corn, squash, and vegetables. At that time, my grandparents still live with us. One day, some of our relatives came to ask my grandfather to do a ritual for them, so my grandparents left the city that night. That night, around 11 p.m., my brother and I were in bed and couldn't sleep. My brother was only 9 at the time, and we shared the same room. Our room was next to the courtyard, so we have light in the courtyard. At first, I heard my grandmother moaning in pain from her room. I've heard it twice. I knew my grandparents weren't home that night, so I didn't go to check. About 5 minutes later, I see a shadow standing outside our window. Though my window curtain is dark in color, I can see the outline of a shadow with messy hair. This time, the moans came from the window. I was only 11 at the time, so I cover my head with the blanket. At 4 in the morning, my parents came and woke up my brother and me. We were told that Grandma is in the hospital and they have to go out of town to see her. We both got up to go close the door when my parents left. After my parents left, we turned off all the lights and went back to our room to sleep. My brother and I were sleeping when I heard it again. Moans coming from the window. I looked and there is the shadow again. The shadow kept making a sound. I was no longer sleeping. Around 6 in the morning, when there is some light outside, the shadow was gone. Later that day, my parents called us and said they weren't coming home that evening. They told us not to cook anything, and if we were hungry, we only ate cereal or ramen noodles. I told my mom we were scared, and my mom told me, "It's our house, so don't be scared." That night, I could not fall asleep again. Around midnight, my brother got up without saying a word to me. He left our room and left the door open, and it looked like he went to the bathroom in the hallway. I waited, and it was almost an hour, and he hasn't come back to bed, so I got up to go check. When I looked into the dark corridor, I saw that the bathroom light was still on, even though the door was closed. I went to the bathroom and started knocking and asking if he was okay. Just when he heard my voice, he opened the door and walked out, grabbing my shirt, dragging me into our room and closing the door. We turned on the light, and his face was all white. He told me he went to pee and left the bathroom door open. While he was urinating, he saw his grandmother in her clothes walking past the door, so he just closed the door and hoped that she would not come to see him. We left the light on and didn't sleep that night. I didn't want to scare because he's younger than me. The next day when our parents are at home, there were many phone calls from our relatives. I hear my mother talking to a relative on the phone. My mother said that our relatives took my grandparents to their house that day. At night, our relative arranged a place in the living room for my grandmother and grandfather to sleep. That night, around 1 a.m., my grandfather woke up to my grandmother kicking and stomping in her sleep, so my grandfather said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" My grandfather got up to turn on the light and saw my grandmother frothing at her mouth, so they called 911. Grandma was taken to the hospital and died at 5 a.m. that morning. When my parent came home, my brother and I told her what happened at home while they were away. My mother looked at us with tears of fear and said, "Oh, is it true?" She really looked scared. We did the funeral without any problems. Even after performing the soul release ritual, my grandfather said that one night my grandmother still comes to sleep next to him as usual. She come and lay down next to my grandfather, and he can feel the bed getting heavier. Grandma and Grandpa are close and really love each other. They are always together, so we thought maybe he misses her a lot and he sees things. A year after my grandmother's death, at midnight, I was in bed but could not sleep. I kept hearing banging on the wall like someone kicked the wall. This went on for 5 minutes. Then I heard my mom and dad open the door and saw the light come on in the hallway. Then my dad opened the door and told me to call 911 because something was happening to my grandfather. My dad doesn't speak English, so I went to get the phone in the dining room to dial 911. The guy on the phone asked what was up, so I went to my grandfather's room and he was foaming at the mouth and kicking the wall. His eyes were white and he didn't move his arm but just kicked the wall a couple of times like he was choking. It's like he's sitting up or having a seizure. I was on the phone with the 911 guy until the ambulance arrived. My grandfather was taken to hospital and then at 5 a.m. he passed away. Around the same time, my grandmother also died. Nothing strange has happened in our house since my grandfather's death. I guess Grandma and Grandpa love each other so much that Grandma came back to take Grandpa with her. The family's experience with the supernatural left them with many unanswered questions, but one thing was certain: the love and bond between family members could not be broken, even by death itself. Their story serves as a reminder that life is fleeting and that we should cherish our loved ones while we still have them. And who knows, perhaps there is more to this world than what we can see with our own eyes. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.